Also, following the thing that I told you about the bubbles, this is what's gonna happen most likely. Hi there guys, welcome back again to another video. Thank you so much for all the support for my last, I think 3 glass paintings video, and as promised, I asked you guys what video you want me to do next, and here it is. And so today I am gonna show you how I personally fix smudges, cracks, and bubbles on my glass paintings. And over here is kind of like the canvas that I worked out on. I'm gonna reveal it to you later. So over here on this side was our do side, and over here at this side was our don't side. Also, just a quick disclaimer, these are stuff that I personally do. Sometimes depending on the materials or your application or your techniques, even though you follow the advice or tips that I tell you in this video, it might still yield a different result. So I would suggest trying experimenting, playing around with it, and definitely practicing more and more so you will know how to work around with the materials that you have. And without further ado, let's get started in the video.
So the first thing that we're gonna talk about will be the outlines. And this first do and don't tip I'm gonna show you will help us with any smudges that may form on our glass paintings. So for the don't side, I will be using a regular marker. In this case, I will be using just this regular water-based marker that I got from Daiso. And the reason why this is on the don't side is because regular markers such as this and Sharpie are very transparent. And I find that it's usually not that strong enough to withstand painting on glass unless you're either very careful or very lucky. As for the do side, we will be outlining our glass painting with, if you know me enough and you've been watching my videos, you would know what I'm talking about, a paint pen. The ones that I'm using are paint pens from Craftsmart and Sharpie. Please don't confuse it with the permanent marker from Sharpie. And the reason why I like using paint pens is because they are already opaque. Plus, they don't smudge right away as long as they are completely dry, which makes them very compatible with glass painting. And just an additional tip, if you don't have any means of access to a paint pen, which I usually get a lot of comments about and asking me what should I do if I don't have any access to paint pens, what you can then do is do what I did on my very first one, which is to double coat your marker outlines with a black paint behind it. Also, if you want to make sure that the paint pens, or if you really don't have access to one, the markers that you are using is compatible with glass painting, what you could do instead is to test it out. And to do this, you would basically want to first, on the glass, create a random shape using your pen. Second, let it dry completely. And lastly, swipe some paint on it using your paintbrush with, I would say, a light to medium pressure, and do this for about 10 times. And if it holds, then that means it should most likely be fine to use for your glass painting. But if not, then I would suggest using that paint outline coating technique that I suggested earlier. So the next one that we're going to talk about is application, and by this I mean how we paint on the glass. And this step will basically help us with smudges as well as getting an overall clean look. So over here at the downside, what we don't want to do is to stroke the paintbrush too hard or even using a stroking motion at all, because over here on the do side, what we want to do and what I would encourage you guys to do is, instead of swiping or stroking, we would want to use kind of like a dab and swipe motion. So in order to do this, you would want to grab like a nice thick consistency in your paintbrush and then dab on it. And then once you build up that thickness, you kind of want to swipe like the remaining top portions of it.
Okay, so now I'm done painting it, and as you can see, I did fix the eyes. I'm sorry, I didn't really notice it, but good thing I was able to fix it right away as soon as I saw it while it was so wet. And now I'm just gonna show you the difference that it made. As you can see over here at the don't side, the paint are actually a little bit darker because the marker got smudged as we were painting through it, and because we did use some kind of like stroking pattern to it, as you can see, it also did smudge the markers that we use. To add up, the markers that we use on the don't side was a low quality marker one and not a paint pen. So definitely the opacity is very bad. Over here, as you can see on the do side, even though we did paint over on the nose, it didn't even smudge at all. See, it's just like clean over here down to the neck. And also because we used that dab and swipe technique, this paint over here is actually thicker than this one over here. As you can see, as I move it around the sunlight, there is actually some spots over here which are very transparent.
Okay, so the next step that I will be giving you will be to make sure you're using the right paint thickness. And this ultimately helps in avoiding smudges with your outlines as well as bubbles forming in your glass painting as well. So in order to test this, I'm just gonna be showing you how it looks like, if it's too watery or if it has the nice thickness to it. And also, one big tip that I actually do when my paint is too watery is, of course, I don't throw it out. What I do is I mix this bad and good one together, and it creates that balance, which ultimately helps me not just with the quantity but also that nice thick quality. So over here at the don't side, we're going to use a very watery paint I got from the dollar store, while on the do side we're gonna be using this paint which kind of like has a nice thickness to it as well.
Okay, you guys, so just a quick update. The first one that I was doing actually broke down because I accidentally put the blow dryer on a very hot temperature, and I forgot to protect this side over at the head, so that one broke down. And so what I did was I just created a second one over here, but don't worry, you can trust me that I did the exact same thing that I did on the first. And now I'm just gonna show you the results of how it looks like on the do and the don't side. So over here, there you go. As you can see, it's also the same as what happened a while ago. This side over here at the don't side is quite dark because of the smudging that happened. However, over here at the good side, it is very clean, as you can tell. And also, following the thing that I told you about the bubbles, this is what's gonna happen most likely compared to what we have over here on the good do side. Okay, and we're just gonna continue with the next step.
Now my next step is going to be helpful with cleaning as well as overlaying, which is going to be our next step for later, and that will be to use an X-Acto knife for precise cleaning. And if you watch my last videos as well, you know how much I preach about this, but this time I'm going to go into details with this one. So over here on the don't side, it's not necessarily a don't to use toothpicks. However, if you want your cleaning to be precise, you might not want to use a toothpick because it doesn't have that ability to divide within the paints accurately and precisely. So what's going to happen is if you accidentally pull out of the paint which is connected to a neighboring paint, it might pull it all off completely. So in order to avoid that, I would use this X-Actos, and what I'm gonna do basically is I will make sure that the paint is completely dry, and then I would slice through the paint to get that accurate line that I want, and then I would scrape it. And this is actually connected to my next step, which is overlaying. And overlaying, by this I mean basically is when you put two paints next to each other without an outline separating them. Yeah, that one, if you don't wait for the first layer to dry completely before you put on another paint next to it, there's a high chance that it would smudge. So for the don't, it will be to don't overlay your paint right away, and for the do wait for the paint to dry first 100% before you add on another paint next to it. Okay, for the next step that we will be doing, it will be something that I personally do, and I'm not sure if I'm the only one who does it for now, but I do find this very helpful in my glass paintings, and that is to put a black top coat on the very back. Now, just before I proceed to the steps, I would just like to let all of you to be careful and make sure you have enough coating before you proceed with this one, because if you don't have enough coatings, this black top coat might leave a gray cast on your glass paintings, which is very irreversible. And one rule of thumb for this tip that I usually do is I try to put a black paper behind the glass painting just to see if I would see any gray casts. And if I do see any gray casts when I do that, that means that a black painting behind it would definitely leave a gray cast on it as well, if you get what I mean. So what I would do is I would just put another coating of the same paint behind it before I actually put on the black top coat. Okay, and so for the next step that you would need to do is you would basically just put this black top coat.
Okay, so we're done painting the back black, and I'm just gonna show you the difference of what's gonna happen to your painting if you try doing this technique without properly getting enough coats for this side first. Okay, so for the dome side, we tried doing this black top coat technique without actually fully getting enough coats before doing it, while on this side we did get enough coats before adding this black top coat at the back. And this is how it looks like. So you can't really tell much of a difference. However, you do look at it over here, there's a lot of gray casts that happen because of that. But as you can see over here, and especially the side over here which showed a gray cast a while ago, it didn't show up because we added enough coating. So as you can see, this side is very clean.
And as for the last step, I can't really think of any don't for this. However, one good thing to do is to seal your paintings. And for me personally, I just use and paint a Mod Podge behind my glass paintings. And I did try to use some Mod Podge spray before. However, there were a lot of I would call it like spray bubbles that formed on my glass when I did that. So I wouldn't really suggest that. And so yeah, that's basically it.
Okay, perfect. So we finally finished it. So I'm just gonna do a quick reveal again. There you go. So over here at the dome side, you could definitely see that there's a lot of smudges going on. There's definitely some bubbles. I don't think the cracking is very obvious over here, but as you could compare it to this side, it is definitely cleaner than this side over here. And shout out to our boy Saitama for withstanding all of that. And yeah, I hope you guys learned something new again in this video that I created. Keep on dropping down in the comments what you want me to do next. I'm hearing that you guys want me to do gradients next or like ombres. So if you do want to see that next, just comment it down below. And yeah, please hit that, or should I say punch that like button, and see you in the next video. Bye!